This is the best
Do you hear me?
of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Joining us, Daniel Carlson, the great kicker from Auburn. He at least can say that he beat the national champion. Daniel, we were just watching the Alabama team at the White House a few minutes ago, but I'm sure you have some mixed feelings, but you did beat the Crimson Tide this year. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, they might be national champs, but I'd say we're state champs, so we'll take what we can get.
Well, you guys had a pretty amazing season. We had Coach Malzahn on Friday before the scrimmage, and let's talk about you. I mean, I know there's another Carlson on the team. Yeah. Before we get to you, let's talk about him. How do you grade his progress so far?
I think he's doing great. I've had a chance to kind of stick here in Auburn, so got to check him out at a scrimmage last week, and he had a 62-yard field goal in a live scrimmage. So, you know, that's not too bad for the little brother. And then obviously in the 8A game, I think he had a real good game. He had 4 for 4 in field goals, and he's looking like a lot like his big brother. So I'm excited to watch what he can do in his career.
Well, having met you and knowing your story, you're heading toward a great success no matter what you end up doing. But let's talk about playing professional football. Where are you right now on that journey?
Yeah, right now I'm sitting and waiting. Basically, I've just gotten through with all my private workouts with different teams. So I've had about 5 teams fly out and work me out, kick with me, just in person here in Auburn. So I would say those are the top 5 teams that are looking at me. Obviously, the NFL draft is a little different for a kicker than other positions. You know, there's only so many teams that actually need a kicker, where most teams, you know, are going to take a quarterback or some offensive line player. So, you know, we'll see where I end up, but right now I'm just waiting after these workouts and waiting until the end of April.
When you have listen, you've kicked under the most extreme pressures that anyone could possibly kick under. What's it like, and how different is it when you have professional people come in and watch you? What are they looking for?
Yeah, I think it's a lot different. Just a kind of more sterile environment where they're controlling what kind of kicks you're hitting. You know, sometimes they'll have you rush off the sideline and do a hurry up field goal, or sometimes they'll just have you take your time and run you through a script. So it's just, I think, for them, another way to see you in different situations, see how you respond to maybe a missed kick before, and then how you respond in the next kick. You know, it's just a good way for them to get some extra information on you, and then, you know, just hang out with you a little more to kind of get a feel for who you are as a person, and see what you could possibly bring to their club team.
So, I mean, again, you said it, under any other circumstances you would be on the first day of the draft, but kicking is a little different. So what will happen? Will you you'll wait out the draft, and then will you then sign with a team?
Yeah, we'll see what happens. You know, I'm gonna fly back home to Colorado for the draft and pray a lot and just wait to see what happens. And, you know, hopefully, you know, sooner than later, a team will give me a call, and you know, we'll see where I end up going. But you know, if that doesn't happen, we'll see what kind of team has the best possibility that they need someone to kind of fill in the role as a starting kicker, because obviously there's only 32 starting kickers in the league, and there's a lot of good other kickers coming out of college or still just waiting for a call in free agency.
If for some reason, Daniel, you don't end up playing in the NFL, what will you do?
I don't know. I would keep playing for a while. I would keep trying. So, you know, I'd give it a year or two, and then after that, I'd probably have to find something to start paying the bills. But, you know, I would definitely keep trying, and I don't really doubt the abilities there. So I gotta have the right chance here.
We every afternoon and every evening on the show, we talk about the various McWhorter Award winners and nominees. You certainly are one from Auburn because of your academic prowess. Talk about. I think I had this conversation with you once before, but share with you the audience your studies and what you would end up doing with that one day if you don't play in the NFL.
Yeah, I actually finished my undergrad in 3 years and did that in marketing, and then I'm finishing my last class online right now for my Master's of Business Administration. And so it's nice and broad, and it gives me a lot of options of what I want to do. Hopefully later, after football ends, hopefully years and years of NFL kicking, and then I would love to somehow get involved in the community I'm in. All the NFL teams are obviously in big cities, so I'm recently married, and she is a social worker, and so we could kind of team up is what our idea is, and whether it's start a foundation or come alongside a church foundation, whatever it is, kind of used our common interest in our faith and helping others to do something like that.
Yeah, Daniel, I remember talking to you. I think it was last fall, and your wedding day was pretty close to the end of the season, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. It was January 13th.
Yeah,
so
I was warning you
after,
that you might have the national championships to deal with, but
made sure we planned around that. Yeah, planned after that just in case.
Let me go back to it, because this Auburn season was just so interesting. The way the Tigers, were so dominant and had so many significant victories. I mean, how often does anyone ever take part in within a 3-week period beating the top team in the country? Mm-hmm. What was that like?
Absolutely. It was unbelievable, and that's why I came back this year. I thought we'd have a special season, and that's what it was. There were some obviously ups and downs, but especially towards the end of the season when we beat Bama and Georgia, like you said, two number one teams at the time. It was unbelievable, and I didn't feel like we could lose at all at that point. Obviously, things didn't end right way, the way we hoped, but it was really a special season, a great way to kind of end my career here at Auburn and kind of pass the torch to my little brother.
And if you had to characterize him, or at least from your standpoint, how would he? I don't claim to know anything about kicking, other than I get nervous watching you guys. But how would he compare to you? I mean, you were one of the best kickers in the country.
Yeah, he's very similar. I think a lot of people are going to be confused next year when they see Carlson. He looks the exact same as me. He's about the same height. Tall, skinny, blonde, Swedish-looking guy. So he's going to confuse some people, maybe make them think I'm sticking around for 6 years or something. But he's got a very strong leg, and I think that's going to be very apparent pretty early on. So I'm excited to see him do some exciting things.
Well, Daniel, congratulations again on getting married and an incredible career, and I really hope you make it, because you're an inspiration to so many people. That this really is about being a student athlete, and you have personified that.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Great to see you again. Thank you. Daniel Carlson, who may have, on his way out of town in Auburn, upset a few people with his comment. They may be the national champions, but we're the state champions. And truer words. That's exactly right. Auburn did beat Alabama this year, although nobody at the White House, as we speak, probably is overly concerned about that.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Daryl is up next.
One thing's for sure, okay, on this show, you can bet on. If you want to hear a college football team live at the White House regarding the national championship, there's only one requirement, and that is Alabama winning it, right? Would you agree with that?
Daryl, I bet we would have been more than happy to cover Georgia's trip to the White House today.
Paul, whatever, Paul. Who else have you ever covered at the White House besides Alabama?
Daryl, we would have covered. I'm sure someone covered Georgia's last trip to the White House.
Have you covered at the White House
with Jimmy Carter as president or somebody?
Okay, then let's move on to my next question. Okay, I would agree. Alabama sets the bar in college football. Would you agree with that?
What's that, Daryl?
Alabama sets the bar in college football. I mean, they're the greatest, right? They are, which I can only assume with them being the greatest that it's much tougher to win the SEC title than the national.
Hey, by the way, Daryl, don't be upset. Daryl, slow down. Daryl, slow down. Nobody wants to hear a hyena talk.
If three people have an opinion of something, it's obvious, Chris. You need to shut your mouth.
No, I don't need to shut my mouth.
I have a question for you. Why do you feel the need? Why do you feel the need to talk over people?
Because I wanted to say something I thought was
it's
relevant.
Very, well, you get your turn. It's very rude.
Danny,
and it's very annoying, and it happens. It happens quite often, Paul.
Daryl,
the many callers. I know your mother raised you better than that. I know your mother raised you much better than that.
Is this program of democracy? When did that start?
I mean, I don't understand why you feel the need. You have to talk over me. There's stuff I wanted to say yesterday. I never got a chance to say because you kept talking over me. You wouldn't shut up. You told me our man wouldn't shut up. You wouldn't shut up. You kept going on and on and on. I want to point out yesterday how that kid, when he got kicked out of Georgia, he went to Augusta State and led them to a national title, co-anchored it, which would be the equivalent of what? Maybe a West Georgia or Georgia Southern winning the national championship in college football, Division I-A. And then when they built a trophy case, they didn't have a trophy case. He told me, you know what, you built it too small. You should have built it for two because we're going to win again next year. And he went back the next year and won another one. I want to point that out yesterday because I thought that was just an unbelievable feat for a school like that to win a national championship. And they beat Georgia Descendants also, which is probably why a lot of Georgia fans have heartburns with that guy, for Patrick Reed. But yeah, I never got to point any of that out because you wouldn't shut up. So my question is, once again, you still haven't answered it. Why do you feel the need to want to talk over people? Oh, now you can't hear me, huh? I know them ears you guys can hear anything, okay? I know you hear what I say. So it's your turn to speak. Go ahead. I know your mama taught you better than that. Your mama told you everything you know, okay? There's no doubt in my mind about that. There's one thing that she didn't tell you, though, Paul. She didn't tell you that I was your daddy to you, Paul.
Did I miss anything? Anyway, Daryl, what I was trying to tell you was I just saw something. Caitlin Collins, who covers the White House for CNN, tweeted that she had just interviewed Nick Saban and he was calling recruits from the White House. So what happens when you get to go to the White House? By the way, I should take naps more often. I feel much more refreshed sleeping through Daryl's calls.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
And nothing more pleasant than to begin the second hour of the show than going to Jim.
Now you're going to let me talk blanket, aren't you? Just like what I told what I asked Tammy on that clip you run every day, which is, by the way, the most compelling clip on any of that song deal that you put on, as you well know, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you for agreeing. You know, Paul, I heard the Goobers earlier in the show, you know, the John idiot from, and what's his name, the other guy?
Mark,
you know, the ones that trashed me and you said don't mess around with Jim. You know, they don't want to recognize radio gold. You know that's what the truth is. But, Paul, here's why I call. You let these Goobers in there in the other room, the background clowns, make another just unbelievable, stupid statement. And you didn't correct it. That's why you got me hanging around, to correct these kind of crazy things that come out of their mouths. Hayes said a while ago, obviously, he said, here's what he said, you heard him. Well, you know, par is expected only by Tiger Woods and that kind of player and me. That's what
Jim, par is expected by every golfer on the PGA Tour. Like, that is what is expected of them. You can't be on the PGA Tour without shooting
will you
par
let this
or
guy
below.
stand down? He's interrupting my call.
Stand down, Jim. I'll stand down. Just want to make myself clear.
You didn't make nothing but an idiotic statement.
We're not talking about guys out at the Tuscaloosa Country Club
who
are shooting over their age.
You don't know what you're talking about. Paul, what are you going to do?
Stand down, Vickers. Stand down, Vickers.
Here's what I'm saying, Paul. Par is not expected. Par is the standard of excellence on a golf course. Most people is expected to shoot 90, like you, Paul, like you. That's what
we're not
expected.
talking about most people. We're talking about the players
Why
on the PGA
Tour
Tour
I didn't
and
call
the new
you.
slogan for the Professional Golf Association.
Okay,
not the Tuscaloosa Country Club.
Okay, we heard you, John. Show some
Again,
respect.
Paul,
Show some respect to the
this
caller.
This is why I didn't want to call you show, because you got them stupid morons interrupting. I'm trying to make a point, but I think I made the point. You know what I'm saying is true, Paul.
Of course you're always right, Jim.
Well, you know I'm right here. Par is not expected. That's not it's the standard of excellence on the golf course.
Jim, I apologize. Kubiak was talking to me while you were talking to me.
Look, Paul, it's all right with me if you want to trample all over the radio gold that you want.
Jim, I do not.
That
Jim,
is radio gold.
Jim,
I can't help it.
The floor is yours.
No, it's all right. I made the point. Thank you.
Okay. What were you asking me?
I just want to know if Jim was a fan of the Mamas and the Papas, and if his favorite song was "Look Through My Window."
I bet it's California Dreamin'.
You think it's
on such a winter's day?
Does he like Johnny Cash?
All the leaves.
God ain't no stained glass window.
Kudos out the window.
Oh, you guys are so cruel.
Kudos out the window.
Here we have Radio Gold, and the guys in the other room want to make fun of him.
Kudos out the window.
Not funny.
Well, it's obvious he's not right here right now. He's right out of here. You're out of here. And he says Winder just like me. See, I love it when Jim quotes me. He's riding my coattails. He always has. Now, Paul, let me ask you about this spiritually sick comment he made about me. He said I was spiritually sick. Do you think I'm spiritually sick? Whatever that means.
I don't even know what it means, no.
Well,
but you know something, man. Even if I thought you were spiritually sick, I would not offer that opinion because that is not for me to judge another man's heart.
Exactly. But I will say this, and you've known me, you've seen me at all these different events. I give my time with nothing and I expect nothing back. There's no expectations. Do I get maybe a sandwich or a drink, maybe a Gatorade or something? Absolutely. You've never seen me with an alcoholic beverage, although I could have ordered.
I think we broke bread that time in Columbus, Georgia, and I regret that. You know why? Because I was unable to talk to you because Daryl was at the same table.
And Daryl talked just like he did. I guess his mama didn't teach him like your mama taught you and mine taught me, well, my grandmother. But I love the fact that he called me spiritually sick because he spent all of his time talking about me. And then, of course, he shifts over to Squirrel, and he spends the rest of the time talking about Squirrel. So it's obvious that I and Squirrel are knee-deep in this guy's head. Because he can't get past it. Because you know why? Because he's right out of here. But, Paul, when you say something like this guy is spiritually sick and he's a serpent of the devil or whatever what that term was, what are you when you call up on a live radio show in front of the world and the astronauts on the space lab and anything else that's floating around there and take prayers back from a person that needs prayers? What are you? What definition is that? Because we heard Jim do it, and we heard him say it, and he also said he was better than Ted Williams. Although Ted Williams is nothing but a frozen head, it's not hard to be better than Ted Williams right now if your head is attached to your neck, to your shoulders, to your feet, and you're about 98.6 degrees. You can always be better than Ted Williams at this point because you can always be better than a frozen head, unless, of course, you're a frozen daiquiri. We're damn big world getting faster.
Rob in Missouri, you're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hey, Paul. I just heard that spiritually sick thing. I'm currently a student. I'm going to bring that to my philosophy professor, see if he can go crazy with it. I don't know what that meant. But anyway, I just heard about that Shea Patterson story, and I think it's kind of sick that this school would that Ole Miss would run interference on a kid that's just trying to get his value up right away. And, it's just a problem that I don't know if the NCAA has to make a rule change on it, that these sort of old schools can kind of run interference on these kids who are just trying to play ball and try to make some money for themselves. But I don't know. I was wondering what you thought about it, what you thought of the situation. And Ole Miss was just, playing within the rules, so it's kind of fair game or something along those lines.
Listen, you have to have some protections. I do understand that. I understand Ole Miss's side of the story. I think they're just doing this because if they don't do it, the floodgates will open, and I think they're trying to protect the integrity of the university.
Right. I understand that, but
let me say that's what I think they're doing. On the other hand, I'm for young people being able to go and do whatever they want.
Right.
If a coach leaves, I don't like universities, regardless of where it is or why it is. To me, if coaches can leave, so can players. But I understand why the universities have to do this, though.
Right, yeah. It's like you're playing within the rules, and it's a precedent. And, it's also not going too well for basketball as well. They're, like, trying to find this one way inside the rules they can take advantage of the system. And I don't know if it's something they'll, eventually have to address, or, that there are some kids who are going to the G League straight out of college now instead of playing basketball. So I think it's an important
The problem, though, is I've heard this argument many times. You sign a contract. Well, let's say whether it's an NDA or an employment contract, and you go, "I want to leave." Well, you sign the contract, though. Somewhere along the line, if I sign a contract, then I change my mind. There has to be mitigating circumstances. In this case, there are. Shea Patterson is not the school. The dynamics of the school have changed. They're in trouble. They're very likely not going to a bowl game this year if the appeal is not granted. So he's claiming a different coach. It's an argument. Both sides have a legitimate argument. It's just to determine, if more than likely, though, which argument wins, and that's where this will be determined. But if Ole Miss doesn't try to protect their university, then players will just start bailing out left and right.
Well, yeah, especially that school. I mean, they've just sort of been getting the short end of it for the last couple of years.
And they're now. I don't think. Listen, I don't think Shea Patterson's coming back to Ole Miss. Do you?
I don't think so.
No.
Not after it didn't really look like they had his back. I don't think he would come back after that. And I don't know. I mean, they're sort of rebuilding, and if he kind of wants to establish himself, then. And
by the way, they've already settled on a new quarterback too.
Yeah, they're moving on. But that's the thing with the SEC. New quarterbacks coming every day. Like you thought that Jacob Eason had a job until a completely new kid took him to the national championship. So you never really know. And there's a hot new kid coming up every single day. And Georgia already signed a new QB already.
Well done. Hey, thank you for the call. Appreciate it. 855-242-7285. Matt is up next. Matt, what do you got?
Hey, Paul, how are you?
We are doing well.
I was calling in defense of Jim. The other day when you were talking to Squirrel's been attacking me on Twitter. He's called me every expletive in the book. I don't agree with everything Jim says, but Jim brings an element to your show where you listen. When Jim didn't call in for months, people talked about Jim not calling in for months. Squirrel just calls up here and he just attacks everybody, and he attacks me. He says I'm the village idiot. I hate to break the Squirrel. He ought to come to Georgia. I'll show him village idiot. He can come up to SEC Media Days, but if you've got to I may criticize Alabama fans, the stereotypical Alabama fan, but it's purely meant as a joke. But Squirrel, I've gotten tweets all day while at work, how I'm the village idiot, how I'm a moron, blah, blah, blah. And how
so Matt, you are showing solidarity with Jim, correct?
I'm not saying I support Jim. I'm saying that Jim brings an element. You need callers.
So you
like
feel
Jim
like you
and
Jim are something unique on this show. Is that fair?
We get things going when
so
Jim
you are now in the pantheon of Jim from Tuscaloosa, correct?
I'm not saying I'm as crazy as Jim. The doctor who called in 2 weeks ago sounded like Paul Bearer, but
Well, listen, you need to understand something, Matt.
I'm with Jim.
You're either with Jim or you're against Jim. There's no in between. You can't be halfway.
I support him because Jim, he's like, Tiger Woods. Golf needs Tiger Woods. Okay?
And you're suggesting this show needs Jim. Is that fair?
I'm not saying this show would
What are you saying, Matt? I mean, which side of the mouth are you going to talk out?
I'm saying the show's better off with Jim. I'm showing the show does better with Jim.
And do you think the show is better off with you?
Oh, heck yeah. Because I present another dog fan,
And what do you think of Daryl?
I think Daryl's a knowledgeable dog fan. I just think he gets going too fast. But I think he presents some interesting facts.
Okay.
I will say this, though. I was just glad to be at the national championship game last year. Alabama beat us, but I was glad to be there. We hadn't been there in 100 years.
Yeah, no, it was only 38.
So did it suck to lose? Yes, it sucked to lose. I walked out of Atlanta Falcons Stadium. I walked out of the Rose Bowl. I mean, 2 years ago, your alma mater, I mean, that was a heartbreaker. I was in my regular seats when they threw that Hail Mary.
Okay, listen, they're rushing me along, Matt. Thanks for the call, Jim. I'm sure appreciate your half support.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Now we're going to hear from Philip Stutz, who's not a reporter, but he's a friend of ours, and somehow Philip, with all his great influence in Washington as a political and media strategist, managed an invite, which isn't surprising because Philip hangs out at the White House and Capitol and pretty much everywhere else where power matters. Philip, thank you for the time. Appreciate you being with us, and I'm just going to sit back and listen to you describe what you witnessed and experienced earlier, not that long ago, at the White House. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul. Good to hear from you. I am not a reporter, but I do play one on your show. So,
Wait, by the way, you're not a reporter. You're also a best-selling author. We had you on a couple weeks ago for Fire Them Up, the seven lies digital marketers sell. So I'm sure you dropped a few books off for the president and Mrs. Trump.
I had him sign a few. All right, let me give you some of the key highlights. First of all, best dressed. Tony Brown, who wore a black fur hat, almost Russian-esque. I don't know if there was a subliminal message or not. I had a good conversation with Senator Doug Jones, who told me to tell you hello.
And by the way, one of the last times that Alabama was at the White House, Senator Jones actually was our correspondent. He may have told you that. He
did. That's what he said. He goes, the last time I talked to old Finebaum, I was right here. So he said hello. And I didn't quite get on the front row, Paul. I was on the second row, seat 26.
Ooh.
And so if any Georgia fan is smart enough to understand that message, then they'll know that's second and 26. So
226.
Amazing day out there today. It was really, really fun. The president made a lot of jokes. One of them was that no previous visit to the White House had ever invited Saban into the Oval Office. And so he needled past administrations on that one. And, the team, everybody was very receptive. It was a great event out there.
I want to focus on that for a second because it's just hard to imagine the president not having Coach Saban in. But as you know, you were there. These things are fairly quick and staged, and the president has other things going on. But that was pretty cool to go. I mean, that's as you know, you've been there enough times. That is the spot in the White House that everyone yearns for. So,
totally true. And another mutual friend of ours is Caitlin Collins, the White House correspondent for CNN. And she told me on the grounds that Saban was making recruiting calls from the White House today.
Oh, my goodness.
That is not a joke.
Is that really against federal election law?
Only if he paid him. So he didn't do that.
Now, if Saban had been sitting there or standing there in the Oval Office and he put the president on, that would be some sort of violation, wouldn't it?
I think it's just great recruiting as an Alabama alum.
We always try to get the most objective reporters on. When Doug Jones, who's got an Alabama connection, we don't strive for anything other than fair and balanced here on the Finebaum Show. So we had it. We watched. We broadcast it. We saw it. But there's only so much you can see on television. Give us some of the behind the scenes machinations going on there today.
It was pretty neat, when the song of the president's song comes out and the horns go off. The president comes out. He walked out with Coach Saban. The team kind of came from the White House and walked down the steps that you see them standing on, and a huge press corps in the back snapping pictures. And the president definitely had remarks, and he let one of the funnier moments, and maybe you saw this. But he said, he made the remarks about how big the Alabama football team was, and he kept going back to how much money they will make one day.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And everything was about, you guys are going to make a lot of money. And, it was funny. Everybody was laughing. And then, of course, Tua was way up above on the steps, wasn't even close to the president. The president, called him out and said, "What are you doing up there? Come on down." And but it was funny. Everybody had a good time. And, we had U.S. senators there with Doug Jones. We had all the congressmen there. We had cabinet secretaries. Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, who's one of Saban's childhood friends, was there. Sonny Perdue, the agriculture secretary, was there. So it was a really neat lineup. The most interesting guest of all, Jeff Sessions, was there on the front row.
Yeah, no, and for those who don't know who Jeff Sessions is, he's a longtime senator from Alabama who gave up his seat to when he was selected as the Attorney General. He and the president were very close friends, and it was only yesterday, Philip, that the president called out Sessions again.
He's done that more than once, Paul.
But he, I think our mutual friend Caitlin asked him on the rope line what he thought, and he said, "Roll Tide." Very, very non-committal.
Well, that's a diplomat, and I was with a friend today, and he said, with all the chaos that surrounds Washington D.C., and at the same time we're at the White House, Mark Zuckerberg is testifying in Congress. It was a peaceful, quiet day, and you just couldn't believe that all the chaos is swirling around there. And Trump was humorous and fun, and the players reacted very kindly to it, and it couldn't have gone better.
And Philip, to say the least, there is a lot going on. Not only do we have the news from late last night, but you have the Syrian conflict going on. The president canceled a trip to South America on Friday, so you have to know that in the Situation Room or wherever, serious decisions are being made right now about the Mideast. And meanwhile, you would never have noticed when you're watching the president on stage with the Alabama Crimson Tide.
I think you get a sense that the president loves these moments of fellowship with the players. Obviously his past with football and professional football with the USFL. You could really get a sense that this was a moment where he could relax, and he took pictures for at least 20 minutes after the event. Literally the Secret Service was finally like, "Sir, you've got to go." But he was having a blast out there. It was you could see how happy he was.
Looks like a pretty nice day for Washington this time of the year.
It was 55 and sunny. The most beautiful time of year to ever be in Washington, D.C. is in the spring, and the cherry blossoms were out, and it was a great day. Philip
Stutz covering the Alabama Crimson Tide for us at the White House. 20 minutes. I mean, Philip, if I remember, not last year, the year before, we had coverage of it. President Obama, this was now his fourth time with Alabama. I mean, he was in and out pretty quickly. It looked like, you know what, I've done this 4 times with you guys. I really don't have anything else to say. But spending 20 minutes taking pictures is extraordinary, isn't it?
It was crazy. And, there were a lot of fans there, too, Paul. And the only complaint I heard the fans was they had to travel to another neutral site to see Alabama. But overall, the president was literally taking pictures with every single player.
Tell me this now. Again, the president reminded the Crimson Tide he was at the game, which we all remember.
He did it about 3 times, actually.
Yeah. Well, again, no reason. He did fail to mention that he left while Alabama was down 13-0. But that's. But why bother correcting the facts in Washington? But Philip, I have to ask you this because the White House is not an easy place to snare an invitation to, and forget you because you're a mover and shaker and among the most influential people in that city in what you do. How do you get invited to something like this?
Sure. First of all, your condescension I can feel through the phone right now, and second of all, it's a lot of the Alabama congressional offices and their staffs. It's probably a lot of lobbyists with connections, and there was a lot of Alabama. You'd be surprised at how much staff or people from the university were there. I saw the board of trustees, and they had their families there. And I saw Edgar Weldon there, and so an Alabama alum.
Oh, very prominent person. Sure.
Just a bunch of people call and come up and fly up and spend time. It's an incredible opportunity, no matter what the team is, for the president to honor their sports team and to have the opportunity to go up and spend the day at the White House is unlike anything you'll ever have the opportunity to do, and people take advantage of that if they can.
Well, we appreciate it. I have to tell you, Philip, and we've had Senator Jones on this program many times, but I am going to give you a higher mark for reporting than Doug Jones. Now, at the time, he was just a former U.S. attorney. He had not been elected to the Senate, but you and I don't know what Mark and John think, but I think Philip has pretty much won this job.
Well, you know what? We're going to have to do some media training for him if I'm ahead of him. So we'll go to work on that immediately.
Yeah. I mean, he was kind of out of breath and a little too partisan. I mean, you've given us behind the scenes minutia that I would expect from a seasoned veteran. So well done, Philip.
I just want to know what recruits he was calling. That's all I care about. Who is Nick Saban calling from the West Wing of the White House?
Probably someone from a red state. That would be my guess.
Hey, Trump made a good point. He did win Alabama by 32 points.
He sure did. He said, didn't he say, I think it was really more, but they took some away from me.
Yeah, well, I think he knows that he doesn't get specific facts exactly right sometimes, and he thought that the press would jump all over him for it too.
Well, great stuff, Philip. We hopefully will see you very soon, Philip, whose book, Fire Them Now, we had him on. By the way, it seems like that book's done quite well.
It has, and we're rolling into the second part of this wave in the next few weeks. I'm going to be going to New York next week for another press blitz, but the book has been great. Feedback's been great. Thank you for having me on.
Philip Stutz, White House correspondent for the Finebaum Network. We appreciate it. Great to have that. Was fun. That was really cool. And I know this happens once a year, so why not blow it out?
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Let's get back to the calls. And we just had Philip Stutz on. I thought Philip was outstanding on the program. Apparently you don't agree, right, Jim?
I didn't say that. There you go, putting words in my mouth. What gets me is what you did. You replaced me. Who led you through the war zone of all the year that Trump was trying to get elected? Who was your consultant then, Paul?
You, Jim, were the first person I ever talked to that said they were supporting
and you gave
Donald
me
Trump.
What was the position you gave me?
You were the White House correspondent.
Okay, why am I been replaced by bland, vanilla, little Philly? Why, Paul?
Okay,
what are your
Jim, actually, you're
get off the floor. Who's better than the radio go of your show doing this kind of job rather than Philly, whatever his name is?
First of all, we have now you're back to being the political correspondent.
Well, I mean, really, Paul. I mean, you said the most compelling guy you have.
Jim, what do you have against Philip Stutz?
Oh, he's more compelling than me.
Jim, I just asked you what you had against him.
I got nothing except he's a leftist liberal. That's all I've got against
Jim, he's not a leftist liberal.
Well, Doug Jones is, and he's a buddy of Doug.
No, Jim. First of all, Doug Jones is a Democrat.
That's a liberal, Paul.
Okay, I'm not going to argue. Philip Stutz is a Republican, I think.
Well, he doesn't act
all
like
he did, Jim, was say he ran into Senator Jones and said hello to him. Is there anything wrong with that?
Whatever you say, Paul. I'm just saying.
I would say hello to him too. I would say,
thank you for giving me the position back
the other
that you should
senator
have given
too.
me back, because you know where the radio gold comes from, and I think that's a wise decision. Otherwise, you know what I've been thinking about you?
What?
I think I've been thinking it's like you've been mad at your show by the way you've acted lately. I mean, seriously, Paul, you're not helping your show by doing some of these things.
Jim, I need to hear more about this.
All right, we'll have that closed-door meeting we're going to have, right?
Jim, I need to talk to you soon. Things are happening.
Get with me and my people.
Jim, I can't wait till like 4 months to get an appointment.
You really can't. I'm glad you're waking up to that.
No, I mean, time is of the essence.
Yeah, everything's going out the window. Help me, Paul. Window.
What is it, Mark?
Winder.
Yeah, help me with, and let me be as sharp as those two clowns in the background. I yearn to be that sharp, Paul.
You don't need to name call them. I mean, they're just two guys.
No, they don't name call me, do they?
But Jim, you're a star. They're just two.
I know,
two guys.
And they got no chance of being that because they don't have the capability, they don't have the ability, and they don't have the gravitas. See you, Paul.
No, they don't. Mark and John, you obviously have been told your place.
I would have been a Hall of Famer, Paul, but didn't put my hand through the window.
That was a mic drop, in case anybody was wondering.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
Maxine is calling next. Good afternoon, Maxine.
Hello, Paul.
Hi there.
I was going to say two things. First, that other caller asked what I've been wanting to ask you. Had you ever saw Jim from Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, never.
You know, when the caller asked you, had you ever saw Jim before?
I have never seen him.
Okay,
no.
Okay. I had been wanting to ask you that. I was going to say sometimes when I listen to him, if you have security, they need to know what he looks like. I'm serious.
Well, let me say this.
He sounds crazy sometimes.
Several people have sent me what they think is Jim. I don't know whether that's Jim or not, so I don't think it's fair to show someone on the screen.
No, I wouldn't want you to do that. I'm talking about you yourself.
But yeah, I would like to meet him. I feel like I'm trying to find J.D. Salinger. I mean, I just have never. I can't seem to land him.
I mean, like I said, if you have security, they need to know what he looks like. I'm serious.
No, I think we all would, and I wish Jim would agree. I mean, we've invited him to the studio. We offered to send a plane for him.
I heard you talk about it. Oh, and another thing I'd like to say is, if UK ever gets to win another championship, I would hope that they would go to the White House, no matter who was president. You know what I'm saying? You know how
sure.
people refuse and everything, because the presidential office to me.
Yeah, you know, and I have to give Saban credit today. He chose not to politicize this visit. I've heard Saban say this in the past. He respects the office. I think he was very generic in what he said because he understands. I mean, listen, every president is a polarizing figure. There are people that like the president and people that don't. And
I'm old enough to know. Every one of them.
I'll tell you. I will tell you this story though, Maxine. I had the occasion about 5 or 6 years ago to be at the White House in the West Wing, and as you again, I don't mean to. I'm trying to describe as you come out of the Oval Office down a long hallway. You'll take a right. And then it takes you into the Rose Garden, and there was a picture. It was the last picture before you got to the Rose Garden, and the picture was of President Obama and of Nick Saban. I think it was at one of the either 11 or 12, whatever year they were there, both years, obviously. And I happened to see Saban a couple of months later, a couple of weeks later, it wasn't that long, and I said, by the way, I know this sounded a little bit self-serving here. I said, I happened to be at the White House the other day, and I saw your picture up, and he actually broke into one of the 3 or 4 times in my life I've ever seen him break into a wide grin. He got a big kick out of the fact that his picture was up. They rotate the pictures in and out, or they did under President Obama. I don't know what they do now under Mr. Trump, but it doesn't matter who the president is.
That's the way I feel.
I think you should go.
I think that the office of the president should, no matter who.
I totally agree with you. And listen, professional teams, college teams, are all welcome to say whatever they want, but you're not there because of the individual. You're there because of the office.
Yeah, I think politics and the sports and everything it should be. That's just a separate thing. And like I said, if I had a chance to go, I don't care who was president.
No, I agree. It doesn't matter to me.
I would love to go. I would love to go because I love history and everything, and I just think I would love to go.
There is nothing quite like it. I've had the honor of being there a couple of times. especially in the last few years, Maxine. I was in there a couple of years, maybe 2 years ago, walked in that place, and there is just nothing like it. And I haven't. It's not like I've been to inside Buckingham Palace. I've been outside Buckingham Palace. Maybe the Vatican. Certainly, the Vatican would probably top anything I will have ever seen walking in there. But okay, Jim wants to explain why he will not come on this show and be seen in public. What's the answer, Jim?
Well, first, let me respond to Max there, Maxine. Maxine, what business were you in before you got in mine?
Ooh.
Okay, Paul, I'm going to go. I'm going to tell you exactly what I've told you 2 or 3 times since I've been on your show.
Okay.
From day one, I tell you, the putrid eye monkey bashed me, and I knew all those kind of people. 90% of the people at those functions were people that hated me, and I didn't like them. I promise you. The only person I miss not being with, and we talked about it many times, was Shane. You know that. I miss not being with Shane. Other than that, I don't want to get around. I don't associate with trash. And I promise you, most of those people at your functions, including Greg, are trash, in my opinion, because they're wannabe haters. I mean, they're haters, and they
Jim, but wouldn't you put some of this to bed if you?
I don't have to put anything to bed, Paul. I'm not. You think I need to come up there? I don't need to prove anything to you or any of the people that you talk to.
No, you don't need to prove anything, Jim. But at least you would be showing, hey, this is me. I'm Jim from Tuscaloosa. I'm here every day. I mean, what's that?
You know who I am on the radio. You don't compliment 9 people by telling them what you told about me in the book. I mean, look, Paul, I told you just that, simple as that. I don't want to be around those people. And I'm afraid if I was around them, something might happen either way.
Something might happen? What do you mean something might happen?
Well, I mean, if one of them took a shot at me with a fist, I'm like Trump, man. I come back
Jim,
at you.
I promise you, you will have security.
No, you can't promise me anything because you don't know.
Jim, you will. If you're on our show, you will be protected. No one will get at you.
I don't want to be protected. I don't want to be, and I don't want to be around buffoon liars like iMonkey, Squirrel, on and on, Maxine, Greg from wherever he is. I mean, by the way,
Jim,
you know I'm
Jim,
real.
I mean, is there something about people that you don't like?
Let me finish, please.
No, well,
is that Greg? Wait, is that Greg guy? You think we wonder if he's real? I mean, if he's real and he was in the submarine Navy.
Jim, I met Greg last year in Birmingham at SEC Media Days. He is real.
Yeah, well, I know he's really a jerk. What he really is.
No, he's not a jerk. He served this country.
No, he is a jerk, Paul. But the way he trashes me on the show, that's all I go for. I told you the truth. That's all I got for you on that. Thank you,
Jim. I'm trying to help you. Can't help you. I don't know where to go after that. William is up next in Kentucky. What do you say, William?
Hey, Paul. Hey, I'm about sick of Jim and Darryl. You know, all they want to do is call and bellyache. You know, you can tell by just listening to them on the phone that their mama had to tie a pork chop around her neck to get the dogs to play with him. You know, all they were in high school was probably managers. They carried the water for the players and the sweat rags. You know, and then he wants to get on here and then cut people down like Maxine and everybody else. And, John, you was right. Par is an average on what an average golfer should shoot on the golf course. The better you are, the lower your score is. The worse you are, the higher the score. You know, this show is a great show, but damn if I don't get tired of listening to the belly aching from them two. That's all I got to say, Paul.
SRO.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Larry, always great to hear from Larry. Larry's never told anyone to get off his lawn.
No. They told me, but you know what I told them, boys? Hey, stand down, boys. Stand down.
Hey, Larry, I'm just thinking that, if Alabama wins it again, will you go to the White House? I'll take you to would you like to go to the White House next year?
Oh, man. People downplay that.
Can you imagine walking into the Oval Office and say, President Trump, he said, Larry from Shelby, the Finebaum Show, right?
Woo! Yes,
He watches. I guarantee he's got it on right now.
You dang right. No Trump knows when I do the BL sign. Hey, me and you, little BL Jack, I guarantee you'd drink one with me. He's a BL man. But that would be amazing, boy. I mean, I want to do, two things in my life I would love to do, Paul. Right now, I know I'm short of time, but I would love to beat the snot out of them two Yankee Doodle butt wipers there you got. And,
hold on a second, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Hold on just 1 second there.
Well,
I'd like to get Mark and John on our screen here for a second. And
can I just rerun yesterday's show or Monday's show or Thursday's show?
Larry, repeat what you just said. First, number one thing you'd like to do.
I'd like to beat the snot out of them two Yankees in there.
Snot out of the Big Ten, John and Mark, them Yankee butt wipers.
Larry, I really don't appreciate your aggression. I thought we were friends.
That means I'm hitting home. That means I'm doing good, Jack. Woo, man, show me some fire, baby. Fire. Show me something. Woo, get mad, Jack.
I'm not ready to be mad today, Larry. I'm trying to come to a truce with you. You're a funny guy. We like your calls.
Used to like his calls.
Used to.
Now, Larry, hold on a second, Larry. I just had a curiosity. There's all kinds of variations of beating whatever. Beating the snot out. Is that just like what?
Just beating the snot out. When the snot runs out their nose,
So as soon as the snot starts running out, is that like tapping out of the fight?
That's a tapping out.
You don't need to do anything more once the snot starts appearing.
That's right. And Big Ten John challenged me on his phone to that golf tournament that he's been promising me. And the one thing that would make me happy, and I would treat them like gold, if they could get me and Rich on the golf course and beat us like we've been getting promised. And I want it. And I should be. And Big Ten John, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Some poor man like me. What's something happened to me tomorrow?
Larry, golf is a gentleman's game, Larry.
Well,
this kind of talk is not appreciated at the Finebaum Country Club.
Okay, I will tone down if you'll play me. If you'll play me and Rich at his golf course, and if we lose, I'll do anything you want me to do. I'll say anything. I'll wear anything. I'll sing songs.
Larry, I don't wake up in the morning thinking about what you're going to wear in the afternoon, okay? That's the last thing on my mind.
Come on, man. You promised. You said you'd play us. Are you teasing me? Is that what you're doing?
Pick a good golf course, make it tee time, and we'll be there, Larry. It's not that difficult.
I'm going to be nicer from now on. I ain't going to be so mean.
Be a gentleman, Larry. I know you've got it deep inside of you, brother. Be a gentleman.
But I am, and we get on that golf course, you're going to see the gentleman. That's what they call me, gentleman. Okay?
Got it, Jack.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Roll Tide. Roll Tide.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Barrett Sallee joining us. Always great to talk to Barrett. Barrett, thanks for the time. Let me get, first of all, your reaction to Alabama at the White House. Certainly, it's always a good recruiting tool, especially when Nick Saban calls recruits from the White House.
You can't let a great opportunity go to waste, and calling recruits from the White House, I'm sure, will be something that gets their attention. And I thought it was interesting in the little speech the minor speech that they gave that Donald Trump said that Nick Saban had never been in the Oval Office during any of his previous trips there.
We're fact checking him on that.
I was going to say, if I was Nick Saban or if anybody, if I was any of those guys, that'd be the first request that I have: go to the Oval Office. But if he did go to the Oval Office, I want to know if he called a recruit, and I want to know which recruit he called, because that is one heck of a recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, we suspect it would be from a deep red state, but that would be pretty much the entire SEC, wouldn't it?
Right, and I would suggest maybe FaceTiming, but definitely don't use Facebook Live based on other things that are happening in Washington, D.C. today.
Was all booked up today.
Right, I think they were tied up somewhere else.
Well, let's get that. We put a bow on that. Let me get you to one of the other interesting stories of the day, and that's the Shea Patterson conundrum. He wants to go to Michigan. A couple of things are happening. Still don't know clarity on the Ole Miss appeal. And now Ole Miss is doing – what exactly are they doing, Barrett?
Well, they're not really doing anything. I think this is – Ole Miss doesn't have any say whether Shea Patterson's eligible or not. They can, give him a blessing or, in fact, in what they did, say they disagree with his appeal for a waiver to be eligible immediately. But in reality, they're not doing anything. Like, nothing that Ole Miss says is going to sway the NCAA one way or the other. So really, I think all they're doing is trying to prevent this from happening with other school players that go to Ole Miss or go to other schools or whatever. And I think they want to save face a little bit. And I don't necessarily know if that's working. If I were Ole Miss, I would back off because I don't think it's working. And full disclosure, I think if a school goes under NCAA investigation, those players should be able to transfer and play immediately regardless of their classification, regardless if they're going to miss out on a bowl game. But rules are rules. And I think Ole Miss is looking at this saying, Shea Patterson was recruited with a bunch of other guys with the knowledge that the investigation was happening. And at that time, remember, it was 8 of 11 were football related allegations, but none of them were overly serious. None of them were overly crippling at that time. And the second notice of allegations is the one that really brought down Ole Miss, and that didn't exist yet. And I think Ole Miss is looking at this saying, would this even be considered? Would a waiver even be considered had the hammer not come down? And the answer, I think, is no. I think anybody can look at that and say, no, it probably would not even be considered. And I think that they feel like they're being used, in a sense, by players who just wanted to get out, despite the fact that, they kind of knew what this all was going in. I mean, Shea Patterson's brother was on staff. He did enroll early, so he was already on campus when that notice of allegation was the first one was released. But I mean, it's not like that's the one that brought down Ole Miss. I think they kind of feel like they're being used a little bit. So it's a complicated situation, and I understand why they're doing it. I don't think it's really the right course of action, but I understand where they're coming from.
Barrett Sallee with us. Barrett, we are mowing our way through all the spring games in the SEC. We're heading toward, I think, the third weekend of it. Before we get to this weekend, what any takeaways from the previous 2 weeks? South Carolina the first week, and then a couple of games, including Auburn last Saturday.
Yeah, I think South Carolina is the clear-cut number 2 team in the SEC East. I love that offense. I think you didn't get to see a full version of it because of several guys recovering from injury, including Deebo Samuel. I'm really excited to see what South Carolina does, defensively when they get healthy on that side of the ball too, because I do trust that staff. T-Rob and Will Muschamp have done a good job. I really liked what I saw from South Carolina. I did like what I saw from Arkansas too, at least offensively, because it looked like Ty Story and Cole Kelly were pretty comfortable in the passing concepts that they were being asked to do in the spring game. They weren't comfortable with the tempo, but, 15 practices in, what do you expect? But I do think that Arkansas's defense is still a massive liability. And Auburn, everybody was banged up. You couldn't really tell an awful lot. I do think the one thing that sort of stood out to me is that front seven is filthy. I think even without Jeff Holland, they're going to be better in the front seven this year than they were last year because, you look at the versatility on the defensive line alone, it's pretty astounding.
Talking to Barrett Sallee, let's take a look ahead to this weekend and obviously the final weekend. We'll see Alabama, Tennessee, among others. What are you looking forward to this weekend? We have Kentucky on Friday night, A&M, who else? Florida. And there's one more Saturday. Mizzou.
Yeah, Missouri. I think the two that really stand out to me are Florida and Texas A&M. For Florida, everyone wants to talk about the quarterbacks, and I get it. Felipe Franks is the experienced guy that obviously a lot of coaches, especially first-year head coaches, always want to err on the side of experience, but it seems like everybody's been talking about Kyle Trask, and he's a guy who hadn't played a lot of football at any level, So even when in high school, he didn't play a ton of football. So I want to see what the buzz is about with Kyle Trask, because maybe he unseats Felipe Franks as the safer option ahead of Emory Jones. I think everybody knows that Emory Jones is the guy who fits Dan Mullen's system, but Kyle Trask, I think, is in this thing a little bit more than maybe expected. And at Texas A&M, I know everyone's going to focus on quarterbacks, and I get it. Nick Starkel and Kellen Mond are both good players. I just want to know what Texas A&M's offensive identity is, because Jimbo kind of got stuck at times, maybe putting a little too much trust in quarterbacks when he was at Florida State, and maybe got into a mode where he was run, throw it 60 yards and pray. And really, you look at what Texas A&M is built for, and the offensive coordinator he hired, Darryl Dickey, who ran a pretty West Coast-style short pass offense at Memphis, that actually fits what Texas A&M is supposed to be in terms of its personnel better than what Jimbo ran in Tallahassee. So I want to see what the offense looks like. I want to see if Jimbo Fisher has changed himself and left his ego in Tallahassee and built an offense around players that are supposed to do what Texas high school players and really what Dickey did at Memphis, do best. So I think that's the more important question. The quarterback situation will settle itself because both of those guys can play.
Barrett, every time we've talked to you over the last 3 years, we ask you about LSU, and sometimes your comments go over well and sometimes not. And the reason I bring this up now is the FPI came out the other day. I'm sure you saw it. It gives LSU the odds of coming in the middle of the pack pretty high. They're struggling to find 7 wins for this program. I think the last time you were here, you felt better about LSU.
Well, I mean, if they get 6 or 7 wins, everybody's getting fired. I think they, look, I think LSU is in a tough spot. I think that Ed Orgeron is in the mode of putting all the chips in the center of the table. If it works out and they've got a good defense, and if the offense just comes through a little bit, he'll be fine. But if it fails, it's going to fail in dramatic fashion. And I think for LSU, the biggest question is this. It's not so much the quarterback, although that's obviously a point of concern. They lose somewhere around 94% of their rushing productivity from last year. It's one thing to have constant quarterback issues at LSU and have a decent defense that sort of rules the day. But if you have running back issues too, and we'll see what happens with Brissett and that crew, then that's a massive problem. So I think they've got issues. I think this year is going to be, a make or break year, and it's either going to make Ed Orgeron the most beloved coach in LSU history, or usher in a new era that hopefully, for our sake, includes Lane Kiffin and Baton Rouge.
Before you go, anything? Are you hearing anything out of Tuscaloosa on the quarterback battle?
No, I mean, I think that the biggest thing for me with that is what happens with Jalen Hurts and has he separated himself because of Tua's injury? Because he was basically handed a golden opportunity to say, hey, look, yeah, you were not the front runner going in, but you had this opportunity now to basically work with the ones the whole time, at least for the first few practices. How far ahead did you get? And if the answer is not very far, then he's not going to win the job. And so, Nick Saban said last week that, kind of joked that he doesn't have a timetable and asked the media if, we have a timetable. But the truth of the matter is the players set the timetable. Jalen Hurts has a timetable. Tua Tagovailoa has a timetable. And by the end of spring practice, those guys are going to know, who's getting the majority of the ones, who's getting the majority of the twos. And they're going to both of those guys are going to talk to Nick Saban after spring practice in his office and have very legitimate questions that ultimately sets the timetable for Nick Saban. So, I think Jalen is a good player. We've never seen him react or put in a situation like this where he has to react to being the underdog and be pushed. And he was handed a golden opportunity. So, information out of Tuscaloosa is very hard to get these days. But those guys will know by the end of spring practice, and that timeline will be set by those players for Nick Saban.
Well, call Trump. I'm sure he got the skinny in the Oval Office conversation today. You think that's the first thing he asked Saban? Okay, who's it going to be?
I just like the fact that Donald Trump really, really thought about saying Tua's full name, and then said no, that we're not even going to bother. Just said that will end poorly. But no, I mean, I'm glad those guys got to experience it. It looks like they had fun. I mean, anytime you can go to the White House and do all that stuff, that's pretty cool.
Barrett Sallee, still waiting for his invitation to the White House. Barrett, thank you for being on. Appreciate it, as always.
I appreciate it. I don't want that job, though.
I got it.
Thank you for listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. The Paul Finebaum Show airs weekdays on the SEC Network, beginning at 3 Eastern.